to ask. Just kicked off the recording, and we are good to go. So we're gonna start. Let's start with the euro pound. So we'll look at it on the weekly time frame, and we'll just go through and do some support and resistance. As always, that's what we start with. And what else works? I haven't looked at ES since yesterday, and I cleaned my chart so that I'm looking at it with fresh eyes. I haven't looked at the euro pound in a while, and I haven't looked at the dollar CAD in a while. So this is all fresh to me. You guys are going to be looking at this, looking at this as I'm looking at this. I have not spent any time on any of these charts. So as you can see, this is probably going to be very raw and very quick. Now, when you said, I think it was Fonty, and I do see you on the call, you asked for the euro pounds. When you said higher time frames, how higher time frame do you want to stay? We can go as low as you want. We can stay as high as you want. Just did weekly support and resistance onto the daily. Actually, let's get some of these weekly fib levels on there. But do you want to stay at any particular level, or any particular time frame, or do you care how far down we drop? Your call. Just drop it into chat. So let's see our swing.
You can pretty much go as low as the 4-hour time frame.
Okay. Sounds good.
Appreciate it.
No problem. So our swing sits in the middle of nowhere. That didn't fill clean. Impulse on the weekly. Middle of nowhere. High to high.
Yeah, because the only reason I thought not to go any lower, because if you did, it'd be pretty freaking hectic, you know.
Yeah, especially when we're in a really tight range. That would just get messy real quick. So I think 4 hours is a good stopping point.
All right.
So let's see, 4 hour or daily support resistance. Default red. It didn't snap right. And I just got the dreaded, before this meeting started, I just got the dreaded memory is low, restart, thinkorswim. So if this starts dragging, I do apologize, but I don't much feel like restarting right yet. If it doesn't give me another option, then I will, but what's this look like from the high down? Don't love that. Yeah. All right, so sitting pretty tight in this range. We go to the low. All right, so if we get this little impulse or swing run here, it works out that recent daily structure sits right at the 50%, and then more daily structure sits at the 61.8. So that starts to work out well. And if we look at the last push up, doesn't fill much. But that's a nice little spike down low. All right, so let's switch off, because it is a little bit hectic, let's switch off into a zone. We'll do that to 50%, 61.8 zone. And get rid of this because we don't really need it, but we'll add a text note. Okay, so that's just gonna annotate this zone as a whole. Do I want the arrow? No. That annotates that zone as a whole. That's a little bit easier to read. And now we don't have to worry about extra lines. And let's actually change that so that we don't stake it for supply and demand, so we don't get the movement out of there that we would like for that. This, on the other hand, we get a nice supply zone up top and decent little demands down below. So we've got a pretty good range established. Not a bad, that didn't snap to the right place either, not a bad trend line low off of that range. And that's not as clean. We can leave it. It's not as clean as I would like getting like in this last little push here, but it is holding. Something that's worth noting in the event that we break above it, but I'm going to darken that because I don't really love that. This, on the other hand, looks fairly decent, and that looks like a nice clean retracement. Yeah, it's a pretty good retracement. We haven't breached the high, so I'm going to leave the 78.6 on there. Don't need the 50. Negative 23.6. Let's change the color scheme on this to differentiate a little bit. And let's just drop it down to the true low. So now that looks a little better, and we can start to grab some shorter term trends. So now if we were to go down on the 4-hour, this would look a little bit nicer. And now this is the 4-hour level. Yeah, because it just hadn't. So the 50%, there was a question as to why I dropped the 50% off of there. Because if you look at it, right, it's tested initially, but then this was messy, and we broke straight through it. This was messy. We did come back up and retest, but then we came back down and dove past it a little bit. It just hasn't held as cleanly as I would have liked. So for me, I mean, because we tested the 61.8 once and we haven't tested again, but it's, it held really nice, and we haven't tested the 78.6 at all. Those hold more validity than the 50 right now, just because the 50's been, it was tested cleanly, but then it was just a bit of a bit loose in the retest. Where did I? Oh. And I don't know that I ever saved that high 4-hour price level. I think I clicked out before I got the chance to. Four-hour range. So we are testing. This is the level that we're currently testing. You see, it was decent resistance. I still don't love it. Now we're starting to get a little messy, and this is even the 4-hour now. Fonte is starting to get a little bit crazed and a little bit hectic, but it's a messy chart. And I know that's exactly what you called out in the comment that you had posted. It's not super smooth right now. There's nothing about it that screams great entry. It's really messy. For me, I like this area up here. It might take a while to get up there. I like this 61.8 right at the bottom of that, right where that 50% retracement is. You see, we got the clean retracement. If we can just push up, and this is wishful thinking, if we can push up past kind of this range high here, and I'll even drop this a little bit, kind of where we fell off. If we can push up past this level, then I'm going to be much happier. Right now, this is a mess. I don't want to trade that unless we come back down and trade here. I'm even going to get rid of this because I don't love this short-term trend line. If we can get back and trade here and get a 78.6, like a deep retracement off of this, I don't care about the shorter term retracements off of this. If we can come back down and fill, and I'm going to change this too because this is the same color. If we can get down here and test this level, then I like that a little bit better. Really, ideally, what would happen is would come back down, test that level, and they would push clean above this, this messy area right here and start to make our way up to these profit targets. But for now, I'm staying out of this. I don't like this at all. Nothing for me there. I'm going to get rid of this because it just adds noise that we don't need. And then obviously if we break below, right, like I don't think I mapped this out, but so that was a 61.8. That was a pretty clean retracement. So this high right here, this just adds validity to what we were saying. Again, the 50. And let's change the color on the 78.6 because everything's blending together at this point. So now the 61.8 sits right where we tested, and it respected that pretty clean. If we can break above this, and you start to see some of those profit targets up around the 78.6 retracement off of this impulse run down, I wouldn't even hold to bring it all the way up here. But then we have a target to the upside. If we can break that 61.8 retest, this is a 4-hour that's still a good amount of pips to cover. So I would start to look for to build some structure and look to get long and take it up to this zone right here if we can break above this 61.8 and that little range, that recent range high. But until then, and until we can get down here and price can show you what it wants to do, then I don't have much confidence in it. But if we zoom out, it's not going to let me zoom out. If we zoom out and start to look at these zones, the downside targets, now that we did fill that 61.8, the downside targets look better too. This overall area right here, that starts to look a little bit better too as a target. If we break south, like if we just neglect this completely, get rid of this and we neglect this buy area completely and we just break down and retest, well then you've got, and especially if we can clear the low, like especially if we can clear this and then come back and retest, that gives me some more confidence that those downside targets might hit. But for now, I think you're pretty dead on in your assessment that we were, in way too much consolidation. It's a messy chart despite the fact that it's got a lot of structure. It's too much structure, and there's not much to do with it. It's in that consolidation phase right now.
Right, because I basically thought to myself, if I even tried to trade anything right now, it'd be like playing with fire.
Yeah, I mean, in the last 3 weeks is just, it's great for like shorter term. Like if you were to go to the hourly, it lines up great for just trading the range. But if you're trying to trade for movement, and I know you're trying to trade spot Forex for this, if you're trying to trade for movement, it's been in this little consolidation period long enough now that I wouldn't have any confidence that is going to, try to find the best way to word this. I wouldn't have any confidence that price doesn't already know what it wants to do, and it's starting to gear up to make that move and like spring load to make that move. So I wouldn't want to be trying to get on top and below this. If you were able to position yourself where you've gotten the market strangled a little bit beforehand, like if you were able to position this where you were able to get long here and get short here, and you're currently just waiting on price to make a decision, that's one thing. But it's at a point now where I think that decision is going to be made next week or the week after. And if you're position trading on spot forex, that's not a something you want to be holding into, especially where it's not at either one of the recent extremes. So I wouldn't. That's my take on it. I wouldn't do anything right now, and even when it does test this low, if it does test this low or if it tests this high, I would wait until we get a break of structure and a retest to decide to do anything.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds good to me. Yeah, I was more just looking on your take on whether it would be more inclined to either go up or go down. I mean, of course, we have levels to both sides, and I actually have those same exact levels too, so it's good that we're both thinking alike.
Awesome. Well, good. I'm happy that maybe it didn't help any, but I'm happy that gave you at least some validity to your thinking, and happy to hear that you're thinking along the same lines. All right, so let's run over to the ES. And so today is the last day of the June contracts, and so you see the defaults to the September contracts, and that's why we're planning for next week, because I really recommend that you do not be holding any indices contracts going into the afternoon as institutions start rolling over, because then you will be in a world of hurt, because it can potentially move very fast. So when you get, just to put it into perspective, so what starts happening is position traders, right? So especially those that have been long from, I don't know, let's say, let's grab the right fib. Position traders that have been long from here, see we're starting to hit that negative 23.6. I took my long positions off on the YM and the ES yesterday, but not everybody was like me, and a lot of institutions are probably still holding to see if we can fill. Oh, we did fill the ABCD, which is great. Oh, no, we didn't. Grabbed the wrong one initially. So to see if we can fill that ABCD just above it. And you can see it's making a little run for the highs now, but at any point, all of those position traders, especially that it's already lunchtime, come back from lunch. If they haven't taken their positions off already, then they will be, and you could see some volatility depending on if people are trying to buy those liquid contracts and push it even higher, or there's really, that's the danger of contract rollover days. There's no way to really tell. So we're going to plan for next week, because we're going to be trading September contracts of next week, and it's just easier to look forward rather than start to try and plan for the remainder of today. The higher time frames are not going to look much different than they have, because we've held that structure really well. If we look here, that trend line is just filled with deep spikes. This trend line could potentially give us some decent opportunity if we can retest. That's a sharp retest, so I highly doubt we're going to retest that, so I'm going to take that off. Just keep that in the back of your mind as a potential. I grab the right. Decent little now demand zone there. Got, It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm swing trading, then I'll start planning on the monthly or the weekly. Eh, but I mean, I don't know anyone that's swing trading futures in the group, so because it's more intraday and weekly, daily, weekly, intraday focused, I do typically start on the daily or the 4 hour. And that's good. Right in the middle of the range. I don't love that zone, despite the fact that there were a lot of gaps around that. Don't mind me talking to myself. As I mentioned, I am looking at all of this stuff clean for the first time. I didn't do any planning on it, so don't mind me speaking out loud. That 78.6 held really nice the first time around. That's so far out of reach that we don't need that. So we've got the 78.6. We've got another decent supply zone up top. And okay, so started to establish some structure on the 4 hour. So now let's take a look at these fib sequences. Already tagged the negative 23.6 and pushed through. Okay, we already blew through the 50. All right, so 61.8 sits right above structure. ABCD sits just above structure as well. And we don't need this anymore. So let's mark this off as the profit target. Okay. And let's look at this impulse bib up. This one we already mapped out. You can see that this profit target, the second profit target, sits right there too. So I'm going to do change the wording on that. We're currently at the negative 23.6, and the ABCD completion for this one, as we just highlighted a few minutes ago, sits just above where we currently are. I don't think that's super relevant for next week, so I'm not going to leave it on there just so that I don't cloud price currently. But what is potentially going to give us something for next week is our high to high completes right around some strong areas, the 23.6 especially. So it's a broad area, the 28.10 roughly down to the 27.90. It's a 20-point area, but there's a lot of structure. And that gives you, for intraday traders, this is going to give some great opportunity if we can, right? So first things first, if we can test this area, I'm not going to leave that on there, but you get the picture. We're in a nice little channel wedge up. If we can test this area sometime early next week, that might set the tone where we, sell off back down to this level here, back to supply, or in this case, demand. So this would be, the first place that price really shows what it wants to do. And if we break above this level and retest, then these levels become all that much more enticing, and we've got that we've got our second profit targets to the upside. So there's a lot to like about if we can break above. And with that being a 20-point range, that should give you ample distance to make something happen. On the shorter term, this zone sits nice right in the middle of here, and we won't know the exact pullback until we find our true high, and we won't know that until we break back into structure, like we break down below here. But let's assume that we've already reached our first high. 50 is not anywhere in here, but if we do, let's say that we go up to the negative 23.6, we'll use that as our high. Actually, I want to capture it there. So let's say we use that as our high. Now this zone becomes even more impressive and enticing for a long opportunity. But that will remain to be seen. I don't think there's much more we can do with ES for now. Are there questions on ES going into next week? Yeah, you don't want to be trying to step in front of the volume coming in. Contract rollover dates can be very volatile, or they could be a dud, and people could have taken their positions off a long time ago, like maybe like 2 weeks ago, in preparation to roll over and start and to start, excuse me, and to start pushing into the September contracts. Actually, so I don't think I explained super well. The chart that you'd absolutely don't want to be trading going into the close is the June contracts for ES. Oop. Because that's where the positions come off. You can see it moves relatively similarly to the September contracts. But you can see that you can see how quickly positions get added on, right? Like here's a lot of short positions being added on as this comes into play, and you can see it start to stabilize a little bit as this contract starts to roll. It starts to roll into this contract. But what you'll notice is that this contract here, the September contracts, the volatility is going to come when the contracts are added on, right? So that we're going to start to see those gaps, or we started to see those gaps added on here, but you can see that they weren't as distant, right? So if you look at a comparative picture between the September contracts and the, let's do this. So if you look at the way that price traded when the when the June contracts were added into, they started to move. You know what? I'm all over the place today. I'm sorry. This is U8 is still September. June contracts is what I was trying to talk about. This is the chart you don't want to be trading. If you don't, that's all you need to know. This is a chart you don't want to be trading because the volume is going to come in quick if it does come in, and it's going to start to push price significantly. And as the contracts start rolling into September contracts, then you're going to start to see price move quicker and more decisively there. So the September contracts could be going very slow going into today's close. The June contracts could be moving very quickly. So you don't want to be trading either, really, but especially not the June contracts. Now that I got that out of my system correctly, if there are no more questions on the ES, then we can start looking at the dollar CAD. So on the daily for the dollar CAD, it's starting to look a lot like the euro pound. It's starting to consolidate a lot, but we're at least approaching strong structure, right? So if you start looking at strong structure for the dollar CAD, it's a bit more spread out once we get some room to run than the euro pound is. It's Friday. I need to quit while I'm ahead because I'm getting sloppy. All right, so the dollar CAD spread out a lot nicer than the euro pound, which is good because we're starting to approach some of those higher time frame levels, and we could start to fill some of these. Right, we gave a perfect 78.6 retracement. We already tagged the negative 23.6, and we're about to test it again. We don't need these. And this happens with no structure around it. So that gives more validity to the actual fib levels moving forward, because this happened with nothing else around it, and it was a stop in its tracks type move, and then a perfect retracement or a perfect move up. And then coming out of it, we got a little bit messier of a retracement, but it's still held, and you can see that the negative 23.6 lines up really well with the negative 61.8 there for the shorter term run. We can now start to plot out. We'll channel high, channel low, and it's a decent little midpoint, although I'm not going to trade it. It's just a line in the sand that's good to know. And so if we truly have found the top and we want to run up and hit those higher take profit zones, then this channel is likely going to hold again. So if we've truly found the top, then this area, we can drift kind of like right there. That would make for a decent entry. If we fall a little sharper, somewhere right in the middle here, that would make another decent entry. And you've got that 61.8 as protection. And then if we dip even lower, right, if we break the channel low and we come back up and retest, then the 78.6, that's a good first target. But that's, again, if we found that top, because we very well may not have found the top and instead are just running back up to find the this 78.6 again. So we could, you can see that every chart starts to look a little bit different in the sense that some are fib focused, some are channel focused, some are support and resistance focused or supply and demand focused. This one's starting to become very channel focused because we're in a channel within a channel that's got higher time frame structure around it. It's caused a nice little sell-off. And that held as our low, and our profit targets off of this move sit right at the 78.6 off of the, or sit right at the excuse me, the negative 23.6 off of this higher time frame run here, or bigger run there. And we get our fibs lined up. Our 78.6 sits right at our higher, or our second profit targets, and our 61.8 sits right at our first profit targets for both the short term and the longer term move. So this is going to be an important level, If we break this level, then you can almost guarantee we've got a couple of profit targets to the upside. So if we break this level, then we come back and retest. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I'll just consider that 4. We've got a lot of profit targets to the upside and a lot of decisions to make along the way. If we come back up and show bears coming out of this level, that's something that you could probably try and anticipate, because we are sitting right, I mean, there's a lot to like about that level, so it would be an aggressive entry, but it would lean a little more conservatively because we've got so much structure there that it would be, I don't want to say safe because we've got, higher time frame targets to the upside, but you saw the strength at which it held the first time. So we might be trying to test it and then kind of squeeze this wedge a little tighter before we break to those higher time frame levels. So that's certainly a good opportunity to look for a short, and then you've got your profit targets 1, 2, 3, and then that becomes your high, and you can start to look for your retracements to look long and then take it up to those higher time frame levels eventually. Or, as we've already hit this 61.8, those profit target sits well below the range, and then we can finally break out of this consolidation and down to some weekly levels. Right? If you look at the weekly levels here, those haven't been tested in a while, and they look primed for, if we can break out of this wedge, then a nice, sharp fall just like this. If we can break that wedge, retest, and then show some bears and finally break this low, and you've got targets to the downside. But that's looking well ahead. Thoughts on UCAD?
Yeah, I actually have thoughts on UCAD.
Okay.
I I actually have a trade, a spot forex trade, right around that price level in the middle of that inner wedge there. The only reason I took that trade was because I was confident that it was going long, because I had like a upper trend line right around where it hit that price level 1.
Price level 1. Oh, okay, right here.
Yeah, so where it touched the first time, and I took a trend line going down. So kind of like from where that point is, and then took the second point
I know
right
what you're saying.
where it hits that. Yeah. So I actually got a spot forex trade right there. So that gave me kind of the confidence that it would actually go up. I actually have my stop actually right around price level 7 there. So I was actually thinking, if it hits that stop, do you think it'll go any lower, or should I be looking for shorts?
If it hits this price level 7 stop, it depends on where it hits it. Because if we drift and it hits this price level 7 stop like right around here, then we come back up, and when we retrace, we start to look at a retest of the channel. That to me is a good short opportunity, because then at that point too, we will have, let's say that we hit price level 7 stop there, and we come back up and we retest, and we've got this little reversal zone here of the 61, 8, and 50. That becomes more enticing for a sell. If we come down and hit, if we just fall out of the sky on Monday and we come back down and we retest this level here, it honestly might look like a weekly, like that might just be a wick on the weekly, and the body closes somewhere here before we start to move back up for a long to fill those higher time frame levels. So I understand why you took it. I don't love the context of where your stop is. I think, I don't know, that's an aggressive and a little, I would consider that a little dangerous to be holding right now. Um, I don't have a problem with the long. You're long, right? And that's
Right. Yeah.
so I don't have a problem
Yeah.
with the long or the bias. It, that's a given how little we've moved off of that level. I would try and mitigate your risk. If you want to hold, if you want to hold with a strong stop loss, if you want to still hold that long entry in the bias that will fill, where's your target? Is it this negative 20? Is it like right around the where the lower trend line that you had started, or is it higher?
It's a little bit higher.
A little bit
It's
higher.
actually right around the price level 8.
Okay. So you've got a target right around here, which again, as you just heard me say, I don't disagree with. But, I mean, in the sense that your R to R is pretty good if that's your end target, but I think that's a risky one to be holding with that big of a stop loss at this point. I would say if you want to have your stop loss, so your stop loss is currently down here. I mean, I would say that this is a loose stop loss. I would feel more comfortable with a stop like here, somewhere at the 128 level. Uh,
Yeah, you're right. That makes more sense.
just because you're affording yourself more short-term movement, and there's nothing to say that. And I would have it below the 120, like just below the 128 level, because this is like the last move, the last little swing that we've had. That 78.6 is going to be the last line of defense, especially if we break past like here. The 70. So I mean, even this would, in my eyes, be a conservative stop loss. Conservative meaning you're affording yourself more room to be right for your higher time frame bias to play out. For me personally, depending on what's your entry price.
It's actually right around because Oanda has some annoying spreads, man. It's
Yeah.
freaking annoying. Uh, Give me a second. Uh, yeah, actually, it's right around the 50% right there.
Okay. So that's not a terrible entry price. I would say if we can get some bulls to close out the day, and we start to hover back around this area, I would look to pull your stop up just below this 61.8 and have more of an aggressive stop loss, because if we come back down and retest somewhere where we cross a little bit better, like right here, and you still hold that same bias and you want to re-enter, that affords you roughly the same entry, and it gives you a little bit better structure and a little bit better confluence in terms of pulling it up to these profit targets. I don't.
Okay, yeah, that
I
makes
mean, I don't.
sense.
I don't see anything wrong with your entry. I understand the bias. I understand why you did it. But for me, this is a prime example of trade management. Just going into the weekend, spreads are going to widen when when the market reopens on Sunday. Spreads are going to be wide. Um, you don't want to have yourself down here. If we gapped, let's say, so your stop's now at price level 7. Let's say that the market opens with a gap down here, right? And price is retesting here, which is a great thing for us because that's right where we want it to open. But let's say that we gap down in price. I just muted everything. There we go. Now I can hear everybody again. And we gap down here. The spread might be wide enough to the point where you're at the risk of getting stopped out when the market opens, and you don't want that. So I would say
Yeah.
you don't want to start your week that way. So I would say trail your stop up and manage the trade just a little bit tighter. And then if you do get stopped out, which may I mean it's not a I don't have a definite one way or the other, but if you do get stopped out, you don't lose much, and you afford yourself the opportunity to enter either at the same bias or as we drift a little bit lower.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I knew it was kind of aggressive too, but with the levels that we had, going up, that's the reason why I was kind of confident. But I also lowered my lot a little bit, just so if that, like before I heard all this, before I lowered my lot because if it did go down, it would at least, mitigate it a little bit.
And no, I'm happy to hear that. That's good risk management, and that's good thinking on your end. And you can take that and kind of parlay that um, into trading this with a tighter stop loss, and that way I mean, and that way if you do get stopped out, you're I mean you've drastically lowered the overall loss that your account's going to feel, and you can I mean, if you still want to, when we do retest something that's got a little bit stronger structure, uh, you can enter that with the confidence of your normal lot size, or do it the same way and just trade to make up your loss, so your R to R is the same, and then trail it as you push past. But um, yeah, I mean that's an interesting scenario. That's not a bad entry by any means, and it's not a bad thought process. That's just for me, given the time and given the levels we have and the higher time frame structure kind of looming. That for me is that's a recipe to get stopped out farther
Okay.
than you should.
Right. Because what I was actually thinking too, since I was pretty conservative with my lot, I was thinking if it breaks like anywhere around that upper trend line, that I could also add to my position once it retests.
Mm-hmm. That's just I have no problem with that. That's just carrying on to what we were just talking about. You're talking about if we break this trend line or this trend line,
Yes.
the lower one.
Yes. The
Yeah. So
lower one.
if we break this trend line, then we don't fill this upper target, come back and retest here, then yeah, absolutely. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, because it looked pretty juicy, but at the same time, I didn't want to give away too much green because I already got a ton of green this week. So, but it just looked pretty enticing to me. So, but thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Sure. I mean, I love this dialogue. This is what these live planning sessions are for, not only for just looking at charts, but if you're already in a trade and you want to plan your exit or plan your management, that's what these are for. So I'm happy that you're asking those questions, and I mean, I hope that more people will see that it's like while I may not have taken the same entry as you, I there's no judgment, and I can see where you're coming from. So I don't want anybody to feel ashamed to ask a question. Everybody's trying to learn and trade their own style, and that's what I encourage. So please ask, because this dialogue helps a lot, and um, not to not to put not to call out anything that Vonti in particular has done. The last webinar we had, he was also asking questions about the Aussie yen, and so we did some analysis on the Aussie yen, and I think it was like later that afternoon I got a message from you, and you said that just the dialogue that we had and the conversation we had helped you kind of stay out of a bad trade, preserve your capital, and not enter something or not take a short too early or something like that. And that's good, because these planning sessions are meant to help you preserve capital and help you manage your trades. So um, by all means, keep asking, and I hope that more people, as they watch this recording, join and ask, because that's what makes these things go. So with that,
Yes, sir.
questions? Other questions from all 5 of you? And if not, then I will just post these charts. There are, I think in total, so I'm working with a couple of the other guys. I've been in conversations with a couple of the other guys that are going to be adding some content. Um, I had a lot of unexpected travel, and that pushed me back. I hope to finish the market segmentation. The market segmentation courses or course is probably going to have in total like 6 videos. We've got 3 up so far. I hope to have the remainder of the 6 up next week. And then during next week, I also hope to have the mindset and money management one on. In the end, and I would say by the end, by November, see, it's June now, so by November, our trajectory that we've got mapped out is hopefully going to put us at roughly 10 to 15 courses, probably somewhere right at 12. And then by the end of the holiday season, it'll probably be a little slower in adding those courses because obviously the holidays, but we'll hope to have all 15 up by like the end of January. And then from there, we'll reassess and see what's best received, what courses need adding on to, what new courses we can come up with, do some live, like record some live trades, etc. So I would say by the end of next week, market segmentation and mindset would be done. Then the week after, we're looking to have like just a technical analysis cheat sheet, which won't be a video course, but instead just like a library of what to look for in terms of supply and demand, support and resistance, change control zones, trend, all the basics that everybody pretty much already knows, just something to revert back to. And then also by the end of the week after, I'm looking to have the swing trading Forex course up because that is something that's been heavily requested. So 2 weeks from now being Friday, I hope to have mindset and money management, which, Vonti, that'll help you too because a lot of it is going to be stop loss and trailing and where to, mental stops versus all that fun stuff. And the market segmentation, and then technical analysis cheat sheet and swing trading Forex. And I am this weekend actually working on updating the drop down for the courses that will actually outline what all of the courses are going to be. And then as we add to those, obviously the page will expand. But that's kind of, I had a couple of discussions this morning. I was on Skype essentially from like 5 in the morning until now, doing planning for our courses with some of the traders that I work with. Other questions?
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Hey, just on a personal note, I know you say you have a MMA gym. I actually been doing Muay Thai for about a couple of years, so that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. My Muay Thai instructor was the only American, the only active American instructor who was certified by the Muay Thai Institute in Bangkok. Tony Jaa? No, his name is Jeff Berger. But yeah, he was awesome to work with, and one of my other Muay Thai coaches was he's Japanese, and Vonti, I don't know if you've seen anybody do like the rope knuckle boxing. Um, but
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah,
that's
he
always fun.
he was he was the champion in Japan for like the rope knuckle boxing. My the one of my other Muay Thai coaches, and I sparred I sparred 8 rounds with him about 2 months ago, and he put me in my place real quick.
That's how it goes, bro.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. My actual instructor is over in Westmount, Illinois. He's Ricardo Perez. He's actually right now one of the coaches um, for America right now.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so I think he just got that last year, I believe. And yeah, so he's doing pretty well right now. But I did a couple fights, one in Indy and another one in South Bend, Indiana. Um, so far I've been doing pretty good, man. I've been training for about a good couple of years now. So
Were they
yeah, if you ever,
were they sanctioned, or
yeah,
were they amateur fights, or were they like true like sanctioned semi-pro, semi-amateur or amateur fights?
they they were they were amateur fights, but it was full rules. So we could do elbows, knees, anything.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. That in the Midwest, he's actually the only one that for right now that is doing that. But we're trying to get more, more promotions to go ahead and get the Midwest going. So, but yeah, we're doing pretty well over here.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So if you ever stop down and over in Chicago, man, hit us up.
Yeah, we'll do. Muay Thai was always my favorite. I mean, I've just by habit, I've always been a striker rather than a grounds. Like my ground game is weak compared to my legs. But yeah, I've always Muay Thai is what I've gravitated to. Lately, I've been trying to get my boxing better. And it's taken less because I primarily focused on Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu for I want to say like 4.5 years, and then after that, I'm going on year 6 now of doing training and coaching, etc. And I'm trying to get my boxing up to a level that I'm happy with it, and then eventually I'll work on my ground stuff. But I don't compete anymore. I just train and coach, so it's not really super relevant. I just do what I enjoy now, rather than trying to round my game out.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, cause for about like because that's the reason why I actually took a hiatus with people at BTG because I was traveling a lot and it was just a wreck and it was like no way because I was doing Muay Thai too because I was traveling all the way from Indiana, you know, back and forth from Chicago and whatnot. And it was just ridiculous. So yeah, right now I'm kind of taking a hiatus and just training with a friend of mine who actually competed with Glory Kickboxing, and he was on the undercard, and so we're training together for right now. But yeah, man, if you ever around, man, over in the Midwest, hit me up.
Will do. That's awesome. All right. Anybody got any other personal anecdotes that are relatable? I love hearing stuff like that. Or we can talk about trading more if you want. Or we can just go. It's Friday and it's beautiful out. I'll give it. Wow, we actually went the full hour. Perfectly 1 o'clock. I'll give it until like 1:05. Just feel free to drop if you don't have any questions. And if any more do pop up, then happy to answer them. It looks like just about everyone left, so I'm gonna end it. Shoot me anything privately if you have any additional questions, and I will catch you guys next week.